People say I talk about some weird stuff, some far out stuff. But how about that chair that you're sitting in isn't solid? How weird is that? This reality is nothing like we think it is.
When I saw what Icke is doing, I was a bit jealous of him. Wow, look at what this guy's doing.
I don't know if anybody else could do it but him, actually.
We are in a period now where speaking your truth is not just important, it's utterly crucial to where humanity goes from here. The world needs renegades. The latest confirmation of where we are in censorship. I mean, it could not be more blatant than what's gone on this week with regards to Google and other internet central players in information communication. In regard to Project Veritas. Project Veritas is an organization that has had great success in attracting whistleblowers, Silicon Valley whistleblowers, often, to tell them what's actually going on. And there was another revelation this week about the manipulation of the Google search engine, which is really the cabal search engine. They've done another one in the past, I remember, about Facebook and the way that is manipulating information for political reasons. What takes us into, where we are territory, more than anything about this story, is the fact that Google owned YouTube, then took down the video, the Project Veritas video, that was exposing Google and what it was doing through a whistleblower. Then you had Vimeo, another video platform, took down the Project Veritas video. And you think, well, if this puts Google own YouTube and all that corporation in a bad light, well, that's good for Vimeo. So, we'll have this. No, they took it down. Why? Because in the end, they're all controlled by the same people. And then we had Reddit that also dropped the Project Veritas page and pages to make sure the video couldn't circulate. This is the same Reddit that has quarantined, as it calls it, any information challenging the fairy story about 9/11 and directs and guides anyone looking for that information to the official 9/11 Commission report on what happened, which is, I mean, Alice in bloody Wonderland doesn't have anything on the 9/11 Commission report. It's a pack of absolute lies, which I'm going to expose in great detail soon, among many other things. Now, you see the pattern here, and so much of the censorship has been done over the years subtly, but it's got to a point now where they can't hide it. And to have a search engine like Google, YouTube, etc., censoring a video that with factual information is exposing what it does, that's where we're going. The power to hide the power and what's happening. This is the headline of the original story. Project Veritas bombshell. Google engaged in massive censorship effort to prevent repeat of 2016 when Trump won the presidency. And this is not about Trump, although it's painted like that. It's actually about deleting information that challenges the narrative. You know, there's a lot of people that support Trump. I say, you know, naively, but they support Trump, who come from this alternative way of looking at the world background. So that they are the ones that are being targeted. And Trump is just really a smokescreen, a diversion to what's really happening, which is censoring information that in any way questions the official narrative. So the story goes, once again, we have the intrepid investigative journalists at Project Veritas to thank for exposing the biggest election scandal of 2020 thus far that has nothing at all to do with Russia. This whole Russia manipulated the elections is a smokescreen, again, to hide where the manipulation of elections is really coming from. According to details published by Project Veritas and accompanying video taken by its undercover journalists, Google has managed to hire a gaggle of brainwashed left-wing sycophants, people I call Soros progressives, who religiously believe they are saving the country by altering AI algorithms to filter out any and all pro-Trump content from independent and conservative media on the world's biggest search platform. In fact, according to one of them, the AI algorithms are designed to filter, censor in other words, content in such a way so that Google can single-handedly prevent the next Trump situation, quote, that is his re-election next year. We were all got screwed over in 2016. Again, it just wasn't us, it was people got screwed over, the news media got screwed over, like everybody got screwed over. So we're rapidly being like, what happened there and how do we prevent it from happening again, said long-time Google employee and head of responsible innovation, Jen Genai. How we are also training our algorithms, like if 2016 happened again, would the outcome be different, she added. And this extraordinary mental state in this progressive mentality, which I call I am right. So they believe that they are right and nothing will move them from that. And because they are right, they justify to themselves manipulating information to persuade people to believe what they believe because they are right. And the process also goes like this. I am right, and therefore anyone who says anything that in any way contradicts what I say or believe in must by definition be wrong. And because they're wrong, why should we bother if they have free speech or not? Because they're wrong. And this is the mentality that's driving this censorship at a press the button, code the algorithm level. They believe because they're right that they must manipulate information so everyone else thinks the way they do. But they're just pawns in a game. They're too far up their own backside to understand, because this is not actually being done for what they believe in. It's being done by those higher up the hierarchy to shut down alternative information, to expose what that upper level hierarchy and the masters they answer to are really involved in. So it's the manipulated manipulating the manipulated. And it's the video is worth watching as the whistleblower unmasks or reveals how Google work. And like I say, the same has been done with Facebook. And it's very well worth watching if you haven't seen it. But like I say, the real kicker in all this is not just what Google are doing, but that they can blatantly censor the exposure of what they're doing by shutting it down on their YouTube platform. And these others that apparently have no connection to Google, yes they do, are doing the same. It's extraordinary what we're seeing now. It's blatant, and I think it's blatant for two reasons, which are kind of interconnected. It's blatant because their goal is to shut down all alternative information. So there has to come a point in that process where it does become blatant and no longer subtle. But there's another angle to this, which is that that they are starting to panic, this cabal, because the communication of information exposing what's going on has started to have a big effect. I see it all the time. I mean, the number of times I get stopped in cafes in the street by people wishing me well and wanting to talk about the information. It's extraordinary. It's on a level that, I've never seen before. So this stuff is getting out and it's having an effect. And this shutting down and the speed of it is a real expression of panic, as well as the agenda unfolding. And this is how far it's gone now. Nazis using dog whistles. Internal Google email goes after Ben Shapiro, who's Jewish, Jordan Peterson, who questions a lot of the political correctness, and PragerU, which was apparently created by a Jewish man. Now, Nazis using dog whistles. Now, this is something it's worth appreciating in terms of the way this psychological game is now being created. What they have done is expand to a ludicrous degree the definition of anti-Semitism, so that it encompasses criticism of Israel and basically encompasses criticism of anyone who's Jewish, like Soros. No matter how much evidence you have on Soros, you're only saying he's doing this and doing that, not because of the evidence you have, you're only saying it because he's Jewish, you're an anti-Semite. So it's moved on in another way too, this protection racket called the anti-Semitism industry, as I call it, where they use anti-Semitism to shut down non-anti-Semitic information. And this dog whistle thing, like the anti-Semitic trope, are being used now to shut down and demonize any exposure of a conspiracy, a global conspiracy and other conspiracies. Even when Jewish people or Zionism or Israel is not even mentioned. And they do it because they say, no, they don't mention Jewish people, but it's an anti-Semitic trope. It's a dog whistle. They really mean Jewish people. And so it's reached this point. Here's the story. An embarrassing new leak shows Google employees discussing disabling features for YouTube creators they describe as Nazis, even as the company denied allegations of political bias based on earlier leaked documents. In an email published on Tuesday by the conservative watchdog Project Veritas, one member of the Google Transparency and Ethics team, I mean, what a contradiction in terms that is. Google and ethics in the same sentence must be some mistake. He's identified only as Liam, and he tells others that Prager University, Jordan Peterson, and Ben Shapiro are Nazis using the dog whistles you mention. Quote, I can receive these recommendations regardless of the content of what I'm looking at, and I have recorded thousands of internet users sharing the same experience, Liam continues. I don't think correctly identifying far-right content is beyond our capabilities, but if it is, why not go with Meredith's suggestion of disabling the suggestions feature? This could be a significant step in terms of user trust. Those named in the email reacted swiftly and with umbrage at being described as Nazis. Praga University pointed out that their founder is Jewish and has spoken against anti-Semitism, the Holocaust, Hitler, etc. So did Shapiro, tweeting that he is militantly hates white supremacy. Now, the irony is Ben Shapiro is one of the great advocates of Israel and the far-right government in Israel, in America. And he jumps on anyone in the alternative media who brings Israel into the equation and calls them anti-Semitic. But the point is, he's Jewish, and the last thing he is anti-Semitic, quite the opposite. Even though anti-Semitic, of course, is a complete misnomer. It actually means anti-Arab. The story goes on. Talk show host Dave Rubin, who is Jewish, spoke up for Jordan Peterson, a Canadian professor with whom he went on a world speaking tour. Almost every night he talked about the horrors of fascism, Nazism, Rubin tweeted, discuss their roots and how to fight their terrible ideology. But none of this matters. It doesn't matter if Jewish people are involved. It doesn't matter if what's being said about people is completely untrue, as it is with me. What happens is they are speaking in their own way against parts of the agenda, and thus they have to be deemed Nazis to demonize them because they don't want some of what they say being heard. So the story continues. Dog whistles is a term for coded political language that means one thing to the general population, but has additional meanings for specific groups. Somewhat lost amid the outrage over the email labeling Shapiro, Praga, and Peterson Nazis was the fact that it seemed to directly contradict Google's denials of Monday's revelations published by Project Veritas, accusing the company of rebiasing search results to achieve fairness. And that's another part of this. Fairness is a new buzz term that's coming in. And of course, like all of this conspiracy, it's an inversion. So what they were talking about, these people that were exposed inside Google, was that they were changing the search engine to achieve fairness. And what they mean by fairness is their information and what they believe is massively dominating that information they don't believe. So when the information they don't believe and don't want people to see naturally is going high up the Google search engines because of the interest in the information, to have fairness, the inversion of fairness, you have to skew the search engines so that what people are looking at less is the dominating thing. And so it's another Orwellian inversion of Orwell's newspeak. You call it fairness when it's absolutely the opposite of fairness. You call it freedom when it's the opposite of freedom. And, you know, Ministry of Love, where they torture people, all that inversion stuff. And that's how it works. Jenai, the Google executive, caught on candid video talking about, hidden camera in other words, about stopping another Trump situation like 2016, said, Google has repeatedly been clear that it works to be a trustworthy source of information like hell it does, without regard to political viewpoint. I mean, you know, this is comedy club stuff now. In fact, Google has no notion of political ideology in its rankings, and everything I have seen backs this up. Our CEO has said we do not bias our products to favor any political agenda, when exactly what they do. He's somewhat more powerful and authoritative than me, she said. Meanwhile, the transparency and ethics team is talking about correctly identifying far-right content and at least turning off recommendations for things they feel that are far-right content, which is basically now anything that is outside their belief system. It's something that I've seen very clearly in my work in the last few months, how they are using anti-Semitism to attack and censor articles that do not mention Jewish people, Israel, Zionism, any of it, because people are talking about a global conspiracy, and the idea is then, well, you must be talking about Jews, and so you see the blatancy of what's happening. There was a 9/11 researcher who just wrote an article pointing out that witnesses, onlookers, firefighters had said that they heard bombs going off, explosions going off, just before the towers fell. All three towers, the two twin towers and Building 7, that a lot of people don't realize fell on 9/11. And the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL, which is simply an arm, an asset of Mossad, the Israeli intelligence operation, attacked this researcher for saying that people heard bombs going off before the towers fell. He never said they heard bombs going off that were planted by Jewish people before the towers fell. He never mentioned Jewish people. Just they heard bombs. So now you have, in response to that, the Anti-Defamation League, which claims to be in existence to, quote, fight anti-Semitism, attacking this researcher for simply saying what people said they experienced. So obviously, and my God, it's so clear when you have experience of this organization, the ADL, that they're not there to protect Jewish people. They're there to protect something much wider. Otherwise, they just stick to protecting Jewish people. They wouldn't go out into so many other areas of the conspiracy where Jewish people are not mentioned and condemn people for highlighting it. What we have here is another story in that same light. Penguin stops printing a Pedro Banos book after anti-Semitism claims. This is another classic example. I saw it on the website only a few minutes ago. Penguin Random House, the publisher, has stopped short of demands to withdraw Pedro Banos's How They Rule the World from sale, but will print no further copies of the book after an external review found the Spanish language edition contains echoes of Jewish conspiracy theories. The publisher initially rejected all allegations of anti-Semitism in the book, which claimed to reveal the 22 secret strategies of global power. But after continued pressure from organizations, including the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, this is the Israel Front organization that in Britain that seeks to stop my meetings. Appalling organization run by appalling people. The Campaign Against Anti-Semitism called for the book's withdrawal. You do surprise me. Penguin commissioned an external review led by Julia Neuberger, which yesterday announced its results. Well, that's going to be independent then, isn't it? Imprint Ubery is therefore printing no more copies of the English language edition and has frozen stock, sending no further copies out to retailers. 3,000 copies are believed to have been printed, with around 500 copies sold to date. Rights to translation revert to the Spanish publisher. The allegations of anti-Semitism first arose when the author, Jeremy Duns, questioned why passages from the Spanish language edition of How They Rule the World had been omitted from the English translation. Duns discovered that a section tackling the Rothschild banking dynasty, who are often subject to anti-Semitic conspiracy theories — no, they're not. They're often subject to the exposure of truth — did not appear in the English version, and accused Penguin of having knowingly published a Spanish anti-Semitic conspiracy theorist because, to cover it up, they've removed passages about the Rothschilds, which they never should have done, not least without the author knowing. Disgusting. After an internal review from the publisher found that while Banos, a colonel in the Spanish army, clearly expresses robust opinions, they were not anti-Semitic. Continued pressure by Penguin Random House to commission an independent external review led by Norberger followed. It found, quote, echoes of Jewish conspiracy theories in certain passages and references in the Spanish language edition. She was helped by two Spanish anti-Semitism experts, Martina Weiss and Stephanie Schuler Springurum, unbiased then, with the team working to review the content of both editions of the book. So what we've moved into now with the anti-Semitism industry, which is just a protection racket for Israel, that any mention of the Rothschilds is anti-Semitic, when even in their own publications it's been acknowledged that they've been funding both sides in wars. And of course, not only that, they've been manipulating the wars into being in the first place. And I put a meme with this story, which went, the House of Rothschild, and I've got angels all around Jacob Rothschild, it says the House of Rothschild is angelic, a banking dynasty that can do no wrong. They are God's perfection, and not once in all history have they strayed from the path of righteousness. And it says at the bottom, brought to you by shutupyouantisemite.com, which is basically where we are. So people might ask this question, and I will, and I don't care what abuse comes back. Why is the anti-Semitism industry, which is orchestrated out of Israel, why is it so desperate to shut down any exposure of any Jewish person, like the Rothschilds, like Soros, and any exposure of a global conspiracy, even when it doesn't mention Jewish people? The answer for anyone with a brain on active duty will be painfully obvious. So that's where we are. As the censorship of what's really going on in the world is constantly increased.